So, lads, this is not a great look for the Indiana Fever organization. If you've got Caitlin Clark, the star of the Indiana Fever, she's going and seeing.
The lights in Indianapolis have been dimming for weeks, but what just happened could be the final spark that sets the entire Indiana Fever organization on fire from the inside. Picture this. You have Caitlin Clark, the generational superstar who single-handedly dragged women's basketball back into the national conversation, the face of the league, the one player capable of selling out arenas from Seattle to New York like she's the Taylor Swift of the hardwood.
Whatever about not seeing the Indiana Fever's doctors, it is what it is with that. It is what it is. I think a lot of players and teams get second opinions, but if you haven't seen here, Stephanie White says there's no update in Caitlin Clark or potential timeline. She met with another doctor, but...
And yet, the headlines this week aren't about another record-breaking performance. They're about Clark refusing to communicate with her own team's medical staff after a groin injury, a quiet but deafening message that something in Indiana is fundamentally broken. It started subtly. Whispers that Clark was seeking a second opinion on her injury, as any elite athlete might. But then those whispers turned into confirmation. Stephanie White, the Fever's head coach, stood in front of the media with the tight smile of someone trying to keep the walls from collapsing and admitted that yes, Clark had met with another doctor. Yes, she hadn't spoken with the team's trainers. And no, there was no update on her timeline. Translation? Indiana's franchise player was taking her health into her own hands, and the organization was completely out of the loop. To some, this might sound like a player simply covering all bases.
Kind of leaked out the bag to the team that she was kind of going to get a second opinion. To me, an athlete like Caitlin Clark on her level, she should have been getting these second opinions. She should have been hearing from all these other doctors, man. But Stephanie White spoke to the media.
To those who have seen how these situations play out in professional sports, it's a flashing red siren. This is how Kawhi Leonard left San Antonio. This is how stars start plotting their exit before anyone else realizes the process has begun. Clark's groin injury on July 15th against the Connecticut Sun was more than just a bad break. She limped off the court, frustration painted across her face, clutching her right groin. A player used to durability suddenly reduced to vulnerability. And for those paying attention, this wasn't an isolated issue. This was her fourth separate muscle injury this season. A left groin strain, a left quadriceps injury, another left groin setback, and now the right groin strain. For a player who never missed a game in college, this is not normal. This is not bad luck. This is a pattern that screams mismanagement. Officially, the Fever's statement was sterile and predictable.
Yesterday, she really didn't give a whole lot, but she did say that Caitlin Clark was in New York meeting with other doctors. Now, with all of that being said, what does the timetable look like to me for Caitlin Clark coming back? I keep telling y'all.
No additional damage. She'll continue working with the Fever's medical team. Long-term health is the priority. No timetable for return. But behind the scenes? Sources say Clark has told team officials directly, "I'm getting my own doctors. I'm not using our doctors." And true to her word, she's met with specialists in New York without informing the Fever of the results. Stephanie White admitted she hadn't even talked to the trainers about what Clark's outside doctors found. Let that sink in. Your most valuable asset, the one player who can turn a struggling franchise into a title contender, is keeping her injury status a secret from you. That's not about rehab. That's about trust being shattered beyond repair. How did it get here? Look back at June when Holly Rowe mentioned on a broadcast that Clark had no real practice time before returning from her quad injury. If true, that's an enormous red flag.
She has met with a different doctor. And she won't even give an update to the team. Not, oh yeah, she's met with a different doctor and we're waiting on an update.
Why would you put her back on the court without proper ramp-up? Scott Agnes reported that Clark had only one practice at full speed before she played again. Less than 2 weeks later, bam, re-injury. This isn't just unfortunate timing, it's systemic failure, and failure is contagious. When a player of Clark's stature feels the need to go rogue, the problem isn't her attitude, it's the environment. The Fever have already shown they don't know how to maximize her talent. Christy Sides, for all her faults, at least understood one basic truth. When you have a generational talent, You build the system around them. You don't try to shove them into your preferred style like a square peg into a round hole. Sides let Clark run the show. She gave her the ball, let her dictate the pace, and reaped the rewards. Rookie season records shattered, a playoff berth for the first time since 2016, and sold-out crowds everywhere. Enter Stephanie White, fresh off a Coach of the Year award, and suddenly Clark is being asked to play off the ball, sharing primary duties with 2 other ball handlers. That's like telling Magic Johnson to go stand in the corner or asking Michael Jordan to just be a catch-and-shoot guy.
Caitlin Clark. Following a July 15th injury to her right groin, Indiana Fever guard Caitlin Clark underwent further medical evaluations earlier this week. The team can confirm that no additional injuries or damage were discovered through the event.
It fundamentally misunderstands the very thing that makes Caitlin Clark special. But this is about more than X's and O's. This is about the kind of organizational culture that pushes away once-in-a-lifetime talents. Clark is 23, in her athletic prime, already a proven professional superstar, and instead of building a contender around her, Indiana is fumbling basic responsibilities like medical care. And while they stumble, the rest of the league is watching. Take the photos from July 22nd after a Fever loss to the New York Liberty.
Medical team on her recovery and rehabilitation, with the priority on her long-term health and well-being. There is no timetable available for Clark's return, and no additional details will be provided at this time.
Caitlin Clark's silence toward the Fever's medical team is the loudest statement she's made since joining the WNBA, and make no mistake, it's calculated. This is not an emotional outburst or a random act of defiance. This is a methodical move from an athlete who has spent her entire career understanding how to control a game, now applying that same precision to controlling her career. Look at the timeline and you'll see the story unfold in plain sight. May 3rd, Clark sits out the preseason opener with left leg soreness. May 26th, she misses the first regular season game of her career with a left quad strain. June, 5 games lost to a left groin injury. July 15th, the right groin injury that could change everything. July 24th, the Fever announced there's no timetable for her return and provide 0 additional details. In total, 11 regular season games missed, plus the Commissioner's Cup final, a devastating blow for a team whose identity revolves around her. And yet, these injuries don't feel like random accidents. Muscle strain after muscle strain, always in the same regions, suggests a deeper problem.
Noticed something specific that Holly Rowe had to say on the broadcast. Holly Rowe said that before the last return after a quad injury, she had no practice time, which, if that's actually true, like if she wasn't practicing.
This is exactly why players seek second opinions, because they've lost confidence that their team understands the root cause. And when the trust in that area is gone, it rarely comes back. That's the part the Fever don't seem to grasp. They think this is about recovery timelines or workout regimens, but it's not. It's about respect. It's about an organization showing their star that her long-term career matters more than short-term ticket sales or a desperate push for the playoffs. Clark's decision to bypass the team's doctors and work exclusively with her own is a boundary-setting moment. It says, "I'm not going to let you gamble with my health." It says, "I will not let this be another case of a young star burned out before her prime." And while Indiana might try to spin it as a cooperative process, the truth is they've been cut out of the loop. This is Caitlin Clark's show now, and she'll return when she, and only she, decides it's safe. Stephanie White's role in this disaster can't be ignored either. She inherited the most marketable player in league history and somehow managed to make her less effective. Instead of leaning into Clark's elite passing vision, her deep shooting range, her ability to bend defenses with the threat of her scoring.
If she wasn't going full speed, then why was she returning to the court? And that's actually something that I pointed out. I believe it was Scott Agnes reported that Caitlin had gone full speed in practice, but there was only one practice that she had gone full speed, and then she...
White has insisted on a 2-ball handler system that limits her touches and keeps her off the ball for stretches. That's like putting Steph Curry in the corner and telling him to wait for a kick-out pass. It's basketball malpractice. And when you combine that with a medical staff that has repeatedly cleared her to play only for her to get re-injured, you create the exact conditions that lead to this kind of player revolt. The Fever's biggest mistake has been treating Clark like just another player. She's not. She's the single most valuable asset the franchise has ever had. She's the reason they're selling out arenas, She's the reason they're on national TV. She's the reason people who never cared about the WNBA are now watching games.
Has made it known we are going to be holding her out until she is fully recovered. We are not going to be rushing her back at all. After taking Indiana Fever's advice,
And yet, instead of building everything, system, roster, medical plan, around her, they've tried to fit her into an existing structure. That's the kind of thinking that turns dynasties into footnotes. The parallels to Kawhi Leonard's Spurs exit are almost eerie. Kawhi had a quad injury. The team's medical staff said he was fine. Kawhi didn't feel fine. He sought outside opinions. The relationship soured to the point of no return. Eventually, he was traded, and the Spurs never recovered. If Indiana doesn't recognize they're in the early stages of the same movie, they're going to watch their star walk out the door too. And make no mistake, there are suitors lining up. The New York Liberty have been sending signals for months. They already have Brianna Stewart and Sabrina Ionescu, championship-level talent. Adding Clark to that mix would turn them into a super team capable of dominating the league for years.
The Clark injury could be much worse than expected. You know, these type of injuries and the way she's been getting these injuries is not normal. To have these strains back to back to back like this, and I said this before, Caitlin Clark,
And Clark knows it. That's why the tunnel meeting with her agent present matters. That's why the Liberty were all smiles talking to her after the game. They can see what Indiana refuses to admit. She's available, if not now, then soon. Some fans don't want to hear this, but the truth is, Clark owes Indiana nothing. She's already delivered more in one season than they've given her in return. Record ratings, sold-out games, playoff relevance. And what has she gotten? A coaching change that diminished her role, a medical team she doesn't trust, and a growing list of injuries that could shorten her career. Her patience is not infinite, and every game she sits out watching her team flounder is another tick of the clock toward a decision that could redefine the WNBA landscape. The Fever have one path to keeping her: make her the absolute center of everything. Let her run the offense. Surround her with shooters and defenders who complement her style. Invest.
ability is off, bro. I believe she might have came back too fast from the first. We all know the first one went down around the 25th of May. Then she came back and got re-injured around the 4th of July to the 5th, somewhere up in there of July. And then that brings us